Welcome to Under the Rug at Work, where we shine light on things that are normally swept under the rug. Today, I'm chatting with Craig Semple about how stigma is a cop out. Now, Craig is a former detective of the New South Wales Police Force and the director of Mentality Plus. Craig, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for the invite, Nicole.
You're welcome. I'm excited about this chat. It's going to be a deep dive into mental health stigma. And you, I think, are one of the best people to chat about this because you're in a blokey bloke industry and we don't talk about these things. But before we dive into that, can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to focus on workplace mental health?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's like, look, there's nothing like a bit of lived experience to open your eyes into something you previously didn't understand, and that's definitely my story. I joined the police back in 1988, so it's a long time ago now, and the whole topic of mental health really wasn't even openly discussed in any community setting or workplace setting back then. But the sort of the culture of the police force that I joined back in the 80s was still quite paramilitary in its structure and training. And I guess that that sort of fed into the culture that we had in the cops back then, that you had to be tough enough to take everything. No, weakness was not accepted at all. And I was happy to dive in with that mindset as well. The police force, and especially in my early days, I worked at Redfern back in the old days in New South Wales, which is a pretty tough place to work back then. And um, as an 18-year-old, when I first went to police academy, I wasn't someone who I would describe as being a tough guy. I was, at school, if there was bullies, I'd rather run from them. Wasn't a fighter.
Mm.
But here I was joining a job where you expected to run towards trouble over and again on a regular basis. And in one of the toughest patrols in Australia at that time to work as well. And I guess for me, just through that process of constantly throwing myself into dangerous situations, like anything with building resilience, it's about facing your challenges. And
Mhm.
for me, I really learned pretty quickly to overcome fear and I build up I guess I built up enough resilience, so I've pretty much, by the end of my career, I thought I was quite fearless, and that's not a great place to be either. But that was just the process, and I guess combined with that too, back in the old days in the police, we there wasn't any support services available. We didn't even talk about those things, let alone them being available. And as with any workplace, and also people in the wider community, if you don't have those supports available, you basically fall back on your own. And
Mm.
so we had a big drinking culture back in the old days in the police, and so alcohol was a real big. I guess it was the way we dealt with stuff. We'd go to the pub and talk about it over a lot of beers, etc. And so those sort of things worked hand in hand. But I basically I went into plain clothes very early in my career. I loved being challenged. I loved the thrill of the hunting down bad people over a long period of time. So I was only 3 years in uniform, started my plain clothes career, and then I transferred all around the state. I worked in I had a really good exposure to criminal investigation, both in the inner city, but also in regional areas of New South Wales. So I worked in the outback as a sole detective at a little place called Hay,
Mhm.
sort of halfway between. I'm coming to you from Newcastle today, so it's halfway between here and Adelaide.
Yeah.
So I worked in the outback. I worked in big country centres like Wagga, especially in a drug squad there for a period of time. Then up to Grafton on the far north coast, and then I finished my career at Coffs Harbour so many years later. But over those 25 years of my career, like all cops, I saw a lot of distressing stuff, a lot of trauma, had a lot of traumatic experiences. But I always prided myself that I was able to, at those sort of situations, put my head down and just get on with the job, suppress all those normal human emotions that most people would feel. Even if you could feel them bubbling up, I'd just push them down, just get on with that, get on with the job.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, and I think this comes down, this is why I'm so heavily involved in education now. Um, we had no education back in, there's a lot more available now, but there was
Mm.
no education back in my generation. So we didn't know the signs and symptoms to look for. but not just in ourselves, but also each other as well, which is very important. Um, but we also didn't know the things that would increase our risk with psychosocial hazards, etc., and injury. So we're flying blind.
Mm,
And so for me, when I first knew that I had a some sort of mental health problem in the cops, I did not, number one, have a label for it, and I also didn't put together, I didn't join the dots of all the little pieces as they sort of started to creep into my life. And so what I did over that period of time, and it was one particular homicide about 16 years into my career that really flipped the switch, and where I
yeah,
knew I had deep problems.
yeah.
But like a lot of us, if we choose not to go and get professional help, we turn to our own coping strategies. And for me, it was two key things. First one was alcohol, and the second one was intentionally maintaining massively high levels of stress. So the way I describe it is like I had this little monster called post-traumatic stress disorder that was nipping at my heels, and I
Yeah.
would try to stay one step ahead of it all the time and outrun it. And the way I do that is just bury myself in as much work and physical danger and risk and stress as I possibly could. But unfortunately, all that sort of stuff all led to my eventual burnout. So it wasn't the post-traumatic stress that ended my career. It was more the way I dealt with it or failed to deal with it.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so the burnout happened. I had a massive breakdown. I called it a breakdown back then,
Hmm.
mental breakdown, but
Mm,
very language is really important. A little
mm,
side note here is a very good friend of mine, a psychotherapist, actually
mhm.
encouraged me to reframe it.
Yeah.
So I don't call it a breakdown now, I call it a breakthrough because it
Yeah.
sort of needed to happen. Um,
Mm,
so that was pretty, that was devastating because it really affected my family. I had a real battle with depression. I was medically retired from the police force. Um, what was it? Probably about 9 months after my breakthrough. Um, and that whole thing occurred straight after I just finished one of the biggest investigations of my career into an outlaw motorcycle gang. It was very dangerous and a lot of stress involved. 18-month job. Didn't have any time off during that time. There was a lot of things going on there. Um, so it was only 4 weeks after we finished that job that I had my collapse, and then medically retired 9 months later. Had a medical team put around me, doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, put on medications,
mm,
antidepressants, antipsychotics, and heaps of other stuff. Sent to a trauma clinic at Westmead Hospital for 3 months of really intensive treatment, and all these things were going on. But basically, I lived the next 3 years of my life lost. I felt like I was wearing lead boots trying to tread water,
mm.
and eventually, after 3 years, I attempted to take my life, and that was sort of the turning point for me. Call it bottom bouncing. It's unfortunate. Some people like me have to get to that low point before we start looking up.
Mm,
But that did happen. That whole experience of getting rushed to hospital that night scared the hell out of me. And
mm.
then I made a big decision to sort of turn that whole thing around and look for a way to get myself back on my feet again. And then that started my recovery journey. So it was a long process. And that 3 years, it was like living on like a roller coaster of high anxiety with a post-traumatic stress disorder. Everything goes up, it's got to come down. I
Yeah.
would pop and go in these dark pits of depression for long periods of time.
Mm,
And out of the two things I was dealing with, which was the PTSD and the depression, it was really the depression for me that was the most difficult to deal with.
mm.
And so I've got a real deep understanding of what other people go through with these sort of mental health challenges as well through that whole experience.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so sorry that you went through that. But it's great that you're able to take that to help other people not have to go through that either. And I do not envy the police role. It is a difficult one, and the expectations are through the roof, and the trauma is 100% foreseeable. The harm occurs all the time. The things you guys see is not something that normal people should see or anyone should see. And the expectations from the workplace and even the community, because I know for myself, if I'm calling the cops, something big has happened. I'm scared, and you need to not be scared.
Correct.
So you really like that expectation of, suck it up, like have no fear, do the right thing, don't escalate it, de-escalate things, but also know what to do in so many different situations. Like you're dealing with death and people on drugs, and you're walking into things that you have no idea. And you're incredible for that, but it is terrifying. And challenging. And yeah, I believe you've written a book that goes through all of that experience as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I've written two actually.
Yeah.
The first book I wrote was that's like a true crime. So that's my basically my story of all my police career and a
Yeah.
little bit about what happened elsewhere as well, what happened after my career as well, just to round it off. But the second book that got published about a year or so ago,
Hmm.
that's more about a resource. So I've written about my recovery journey and what's happened after in the form of a recovery resource for other people. So it's
Hmm.
educational, but in the form of a story so that it makes it a bit more interesting and
Yeah.
people can see how some of these things, the things I did to get well,
Yes.
plus some extras to help other people on that journey as well. But so yeah, I've written two of those stories, but it's a tough job, definitely, Nicole. But I wouldn't change a thing. I love that career. I loved every single minute of it right up until the very last day.
Yeah.
And I'm still so proud and happy of all the things I've done. One of the positives of law enforcement for me and the journey that I chose and the pathway I chose to take,
Hmm.
I can't think of anything else that would have. I mean, I was sort of in a shell as a kid. I hadn't really stepped foot outside my boundaries and outside my comfort zone. And one thing about law enforcement, and it's probably the biggest thing about building resilience and personal growth is step outside your comfort zone and to things and be challenged and push. I can't think of a job that would have done that more for me than law enforcement.
Yeah.
It got me to number one, build confidence in myself. Secondly, I've not just confidence in my ability to work and to think and do all the things I've done from an intellectual point of view, but even physically,
Mm.
being able to know that I can handle myself. If I won't run, if there's a drama, anything like that, there's so much to it that helped me grow as a human.
Mm.
Um, and also it's almost like and way I described it, and I think it might have been the first book was like law enforcement for me was like being exposed to a big, ugly, petri dish of life. It was you see everything, from the despair of drug addiction, heroics, which is a great thing as well. So many positives there, and but also some really amazing people that I've helped, especially victims of crime who've overcome significant traumas themselves and gone through what I call and what's commonly known as post-traumatic growth
Mm.
is such it was amazing experience for me, and I wouldn't be who I am now even with what I've been through those years after I left the police force. Um, I got asked once by a fellow at it was a talk I was doing for a men's group
Mhm.
at a brewery of all places. So and this guy, I've been asked this question before, but I still remember him asking it, and he said, Craig, for all the mistakes that you shared with us today, the things that you would have done differently, truly, if you had your chance again, would you change anything? And
Mm.
I said, no way, mate.
Mm.
Even the things I've done wrong, especially the failure to get help and all those sort of things, and I went through a period there too where I just did not treat my marriage well. There was so many things I could look back on my life,
Mhm.
but all those things, the good and the bad, have shaped me into who I am now.
Yeah.
And I actually like me. So it's
Yeah.
sort of one of those things where no, I wouldn't change anything. Were they horrible? Yes, some of the mistakes I made and the consequences were definitely not great. But
Mm.
life's yeah, I played my life as best I can with the cards have been dealt, and I'm pretty happy where I am with it now. And I guess that's that life experience that gives me a pretty good sort of platform to do what I do now as well.
Yeah. And people need the version of you that you are. So I, yeah, I just
Yeah, well, it sort of works well in, especially one of us. Like I work in lots of different workplaces these days,
Mhm.
delivering the mental health training. But my specialty, I guess, is with the industries that heavy industry, resource sector, construction, those industries which are numerically male dominated.
Mhm.
Because I guess I when I share that story, it's sort of I think it cuts through a little bit more with the men because they can see what sort of bloke I am, and I'm pretty big and all that sort of thing as well. So I do think it's a good platform to come from, particularly when it comes to destigmatizing.
Yes, definitely. And really appreciate you speaking and writing openly about your own psychological injury because that's how we reduce the stigma, right? And you telling your story and the toll that it took, people can hear and see what they're going through as well. We often don't think of that until it's too late or something big happens. But can you share some of the early warning signs that you should have picked up on and or that you would pick up on now? And what stopped you from asking for help early on?
Yeah, look, there's a stack, but the post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms were the main ones that I dealt with in the early days. So I basically battled on to just putting that picture together. Like that homicide I talked about. That was 16 years of my career. So that was about 9 years before I eventually left the police. So I battled on for 9 years with this in secret. So the first big warning sign for me, and the only one where I truly knew that I had a significant mental health issue was nightmares.
Mm,
And these nightmares. So not only did that homicide occur, but a couple of days after we found the homicide investigation up, um, I got attacked, and my whole detectives crew got attacked by a outlaw motorcycle gang while we we're off duty at our Christmas party one night. It was a reprisal thing. So there's a lot going on there, and it's very hard to weed through it. Um, but it was only like a week or so after that I started having bad nightmares about that homicide. And and it wasn't just like having an occasional bad dream. Like the night, it was totally different. The nightmares were very vivid.
mhm,
They were very realistic, and it was like oh, it's. I would wake up in the middle of the night at the point where I thought my own life was about to be taken, like in some sort of brutal murder,
mhm,
and they were very terrifying. I couldn't get back to sleep afterwards, but the thing with them was they became recurrent. So I was waking up around the same time every night with the same sort of nightmare with some differences in the themes. And I only knew that nightmares were associated with post-traumatic stress disorder from watching movies. You know, back then you see movies about Vietnam veterans and all that sort of stuff, all having nightmares. It's the only reason I knew that there was a problem there.
mm,
But I hadn't. There was heaps and heaps of other little warning signs, but I hadn't joined the dots to them because I just didn't know anything about it.
mm,
But I still remember I woke up one morning after a couple of weeks of these nightmares, and I thought, mate, this is getting pretty bad. What are we going to do about it? And I had two choices. One was declare it, go and get some help for it, and the other one was to keep it secret. That's the one I chose, and for many barriers, and this was the stigma side of it. Um, number one, that workplace culture, you had to be tough enough to take everything.
yep,
I felt like if I declared that I was struggling with this stuff, then I'd failed in that endeavor. So that wasn't helpful. So
mhm,
that's stigmatizing rather than having the stigmatizing culture in the workplace. And
mm,
the other one was I had built up a reputation amongst my colleagues being one of the tough guys, and
yeah,
I didn't want to lose that. You know what I mean? It's about how I felt.
yeah,
So I made a choice. I thought no one ever dies of a nightmare. So suck them up, go to work every day, and no one needs to know about this. So
yeah,
that sounds good in theory, but what happened there on in for the next 8 or 9 years, everything else started to fall apart around me.
mm,
So nightmares were only just the first warning sign, but then I had huge issues with hypervigilance, and I'd never heard that word until I actually found myself out of the police force.
yeah,
So I didn't know anything about this hypervigilance thing, and basically the way I describe that is um, our threat level bar graph, if we had a color coded bar graph, like most of us, most of the time should be in green. where we're
Mm,
nice and rest and relaxed, and then you might be in some sort of conflict with someone and it might start to get into the yellows and oranges, and
yeah.
then full combat, you're in red. For me, I was in a permanent state of yellow orange, never
Mm,
in green, so it took nothing to flip me over to red. So and that sort of crept into my sleeping habits for those 8 or 9 years. I lived on somewhere between 2 and 5 hours sleep a night. Five being a great night's sleep, usually alcohol induced, and that's not sustainable. And sleep's such a very, very important part of everyone's physical and mental restorative functions. And I was denying myself of that while also being in a really hostile workplace as well. So one of the things I talk about a lot is problems with sleep. It's not just post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very common with a whole range of mental health challenges, including stress and burnout,
mhm,
depression, very, very common, anxiety. Um, so yeah, I really encourage anyone who has chronic problems with sleep. We all have problems with sleep from time to time, but when it becomes chronic,
mm,
definitely reach out and get some help, even just for that, and see whether there's anything else that's contributing to it. But so sleep, hypervigilance, nightmares. I went through a lot of emotional numbness, and I didn't understand this until I went and eventually got treatment either. But you become so good at suppressing those normal human emotions at the scenes of the things we go to
yeah.
that over time you lose the ability to feel anything
Yeah.
other than, one of the things I was able to tap into easily was anger and aggression through my work. But those more positive feelings like love, it was very hard for me to tap into those sorts of things, and that has an impact on relationships. So there was a lot of warning signs there, but they all started to creep in to my life over a period of time. And I just didn't really join those dots because I just had this complete lack of awareness and understanding about it.
Mm,
But when it came to the depression and after what had my breakthrough, what I went through there was huge problems with concentration, decision making. So
mhm,
I'd gone from a high functioning detective running really complicated investigations to falling apart trying to make a decision what to put on my kids' lunches for school every day. Things like that. Trying to
mm,
read a book, I'd have to read the same page 5 times because it just wasn't getting through and sinking in.
mm,
And look, there was a stack of other stuff I was dealing with there too. Um, but probably the biggest thing for me was that lack of self-worth and
mm,
feeling like that lack of self-esteem that I'd gone from someone always who was leading the charge and probably overconfident in some respects of my life to someone who completely lacked any of it. So yeah, there was a lot going on there.
and we're good at hiding it, right? Like for all of the reasons that you just shared. So, what about how do you pick those things up in a colleague, in a workmate, in a team member?
It's an unreal question. And one of the things you highlight just there is our ability to mask.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's in a lot of the workplace talks and workshops I do, especially the story when I share my story. There's a photo that I put up there where I'm with some of my colleagues, and we've got the big. We did a raid on that last bikie job on their clubhouse and took their huge big sign of the bikie gang, and we're getting our photo taken with it out the back of the police station. And I'm looking in that photo like I'm on top of my game. Everything's under control. I'm smiling, looking fierce. But what truly was going on for me at the moment that photo was taken was a complete opposite. So I was feeling flat that day. I felt nothing positive for what we just achieved with one of the biggest investigations of my life. So that's how good I was at covering that up. And when eventually all came out, um, it was there was some of my colleagues came up to me and saying, "Mate, Sams, you're the last person on the planet we expected something like this to happen to."
Yeah.
What's really positive about that, though, is that some of those people, because they'd seen what happened to me, they could see that they were walking in my footsteps,
Yeah.
and they went and then they got on top of the things that they were dealing with and continued on with their careers. So there's positives to there too. Um, so yeah, I was very, very good at masking it, and
Yeah.
so it can be very, very difficult. Um, for picking it up. But the way I describe it to people, you don't have to have a degree in psychology to know that someone's struggling and maybe having problems with their mental health. And I mean, you don't even have to do a mental health first aid course or anything.
Mm,
It's basically and this is the keys is that we need time to sort of get to understand and know people,
Hmm.
and which is one of the things with the whole work from home thing is now posing challenges, which we'll see moving forward, I think. But really getting to know people and then being able to know that when they're showing behaviors that are a bit outside their normal behavior and character,
Yeah.
they're it's just the real subtle ones that I find that if you're really tuned in and have some good mental health literacy that you'll pick up on, and
Mm.
then you start joining the dots with other things as well. So I think even with my situation, um, there's a few things involved there, but even like because mine was workplace accident, sorry, workplace injury, they did an investigation into it, okay, so, which is a common process. And I know that some of my managers were interviewed, and to their credit, the poor buggers, like it was they put to them like Craig's talked about how he had a chronic problems with sleep and he's always tired at work. Did you notice that? Yes, we did. Okay, so wasn't anything done about it? It's because we are all going through that. It's like
Yeah.
it's and so it's what do you do in that sort of situation? It's such and this is a problem with, I mean, getting back to your question about what to look for, it's
Yeah.
just those little things that are a bit out of character for the person, as you know, and that's for me. That's little things like sleep problems, when people start getting irritable or snappy, particularly with when you're asking them to do something, or if they're losing. One of the biggest things for burnout for me is when you start getting cynical
Yeah.
about what you used to love doing, and all of a
Mm.
sudden the joy is gone completely out of that endeavor. All those sort of things are big ones to look for as well. But getting back to my previous career, and you're talking about the difficulties that we've got in with the law enforcement, the challenges they got. Trauma is just one part of the picture.
Yeah.
Ambulance officers, fire brigade, even volunteer emergency services, they all go and see bad stuff. But it's the bigger picture, what they're wrapped in,
Mm.
that poses the biggest challenges. And I think today's emergency services workers have to face way more than I ever did. And I'm not talking about the trauma or the violence.
Mm.
What I'm talking about is it is the external pressures around that as well. So there is weight. I would have thought that when technology advanced, that everything should have become easier.
Yeah.
But instead, all we've done is tie ourselves up in it. Oh, right, we've got a new computer system. Let's bring in some new processes. Let's bring in some new policies. Let's bring in some new frameworks, and let's tie everyone up in heaps
Mm.
of that time consuming sitting at the. So they've got a lot of that sort of thing going on. But modern law enforcement too has a lot of community pressure as well, and in the form of mostly being driven by the media.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a phone these days. Doesn't matter what cops do, someone's
Yeah.
going to be filming it.
Hmm.
And a lot of the times, most of the time that anything negative is put out in the media about police actions,
Hmm.
it'll be out of context
Hmm.
because they only show a little bit of the footage, not what led up to it.
Yeah.
There are times, obviously, where or behaviour or actions should be called out, but
Hmm.
that it's just the balance isn't there.
Mm.
So they've got a lot more to deal with now than what I ever had to deal with as far as all that stuff goes. So, but the other side of it now too is, and this isn't just law enforcement, this is all emergency services, is recruitment is a real big issue now.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas there used to be a lineup, a queue to get into the police force.
Mm.
Now they're struggling to fill. They're just struggling to backfill the attrition.
Yeah.
So I know there was one period of time last year where we're looking at losing two police officers for every one we recruited,
Yeah.
and that then puts pressure on those who are still at the coalface,
Yeah.
with extra workloads and stress as well.
Mm. My husband has some friends who are in and out of the police force, and there's bigger things going on as well. It's a systemic problem. People are leaving because of multiple other reasons, because of benefits not being supported and support not being provided. So there's a myriad of reasons, not only it being, police and emergency services being one of the toughest jobs. So I hear it, I understand it, and it's a situation that needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, the challenge will just continue and get worse.
Mm.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, well, it's one of those things too with the recruitment. I know after the Bondi massacre, there was people asking how can we help, and it was like everyone saying, "You go and give blood," and that was a great initiative. But one of the things that I was thinking of, well, go and join the police force. Maybe get your kids to think of a career in the police force. That's what we need. We need cops.
yeah.
And we need to, I don't know, the police force needs to do a lot to fire up young people's imaginations to the careers that they can have in the police. Like I said, I loved mine.
Yeah.
Um, there was an ad they did back in it might have been the early '90s, called, and it was to the music of "He's My Brother,"
Hmm.
and it was like I used to get goosebumps watching it, and it was showing all these cops going out and doing some amazing stuff, real life footage, and it was a great way to inspire people to think of doing some sort of, you know, community or civil service in regards to what they're going to do with their life.
Mm,
They need to look at that again.
yeah. And the protections around it as well. So what are the reasons people aren't getting into the police force? And as you said, the media is a big one. And
Mm.
there are no consequences when the media lies, but the consequences for the individual, no matter who they are in any situation, but can be much worse in your situations as well, is that people know their faces, they know their names, they start sharing, addresses. Like there is a big systemic issue here, and no one's focusing or fixing that. The media really need to pull their head in. And there should be consequences with that sort of stuff. But these are the kind of systemic controls that need to be put in place to be able to support people to do the work that they need to do. Because without police and emergency services, we're lost as a
I mean,
society.
we're in big trouble. That's for
Yeah.
sure, Nicole. And it's
Yeah.
I take my hat off to everyone that's still there and doing all that work. Um, and look, every time I get in front of a police audience, the first thing I do is thank them.
Yeah.
But they don't get a lot. Yeah, one
Yeah.
of actually a good point. I actually don't talk about this very often. Just brought it up is I still remember when I was very early in my process. I still hadn't been discharged from the police force, and I was sitting in front of my GP in tears, like I was just bawling my eyes out in front of him, and I said, "Mate, I'm starting to wonder of all those murders I've solved and the bikies I've locked up and all the drug dealers, and was it worth it? Look at me."
Yeah.
And he said, "Craig, I don't know, but what I'd like to do is thank you for locking up all those murderers." And what he made me feel is like I walked out of there like tears stopped, walked out, my chest was out again, and I felt really good just because he'd taken that effort and
Yeah.
made that just to say thanks.
Mm.
My mum sometimes goes up to random cops in the street and thanks them, and she she says their responses are really usually, "Is there something wrong with this lady? What's going on?" It's like she's got a mental health problem or something because they're not used to it. So, and we should make that far more like mainstream. Is people having the confidence to go up to the police and say, "You know what? Thanks for doing what you're doing out here today for me."
Yeah.
Yeah, it means
I
a lot.
Yeah, and you are incredible. And what I do is, if I'm driving past the Fireys or the SES or I wave
Yeah, nice.
or a thumbs up.
Good. Yeah, it's good.
Mm,
They deserve recognition. I mean,
mm,
I know they get paid, but it's more than that.
mm. I'm not gonna ask that question because we could go down so many rabbit holes. And I want to get back to you've mentioned a couple of times mental illness and just before with your mum.
Yeah.
Which, is not a thing. But when it comes to the workplace, so many workplaces can get it wrong when it comes to mental illness. What do they get wrong and how can you help change that or what should they be looking for?
Look, it's all built around your workplace culture,
Yeah.
and honestly, and I was just saying this on Friday. I had a meeting with one of my clients, and she's in HR, And I was telling you about my experiences over the years of, so I've been doing mental health training now for 13 years. And look, I can walk into a workplace, honestly, and feel
Yeah.
what their culture's like. You can feel the energy in a place. It's like, and sometimes it's just, oh, there's problems here. Like you can feel it when you walk in the door, and other places you go, I'm instantly, I know I'm going to love it, love
Yes.
working here because it's like really positive and they've got things going. And so for me, building, and it's one of the main reasons I share my story. It's a really good starting point in building good positive workplace culture. So for me, the key foundation is your workplace culture. So building and then maintaining a
Mm,
really positive and supportive workplace culture where your employees not only feel safe to declare their mental health problems when they're experiencing them, not
mm,
just to their peers, but also their managers so they can be better supported.
mhm,
But once they have declared it, they also know that they are going to be supported through that, whatever recovery journey they need to go on moving forward as well. And
mm,
workplace culture isn't something that you can build just by having a policy.
mm.
You need to be seen to be doing. And that's where a lot of that comes from. And for workplaces that may be struggling with that culture, it sometimes takes time and a
Mm,
little investment to sort of work to change that and build that around. I hear some people say, well, it's got to be driven from the top. It's got to be a top-down approach. For me, it's more top-down, but everyone's got a role to play, so it's bottom up as well.
yeah.
In that, so having big organisations having peer support networks, having trained mental health designated mental health first aiders maybe in their organisation, but even for the general workforce, having some reasonably regular education, information sessions, not just on mental health, but in well-being in general,
Mm,
because our physical health and mental health both interact in a massive way. So
yeah.
we've got to look after ourselves physically as well. And I know you were talking to me earlier about your goal is about being proactive and let's not get to the point where where wheels are falling off. What can we do before that?
Yeah.
And that's a real big thing for me is empowering people to have the strategies, the things I talk about, like exercise and,
Mm,
the way you manage negative thinking, giving back through volunteer work, practicing gratitude, stacks of stuff, meditation, all these things that I've personally used, trying to encourage other people through that experience to take these things on too, to sort of build their armor
yeah.
against dealing with stress and things getting out of hand. So that's a big thing as well, is to show that you've got an interest
Mm,
in the well-being of your people.
yeah.
There's one of my mining clients who I won't say who they are, but look, it's probably one of my favorite workplaces to walk into because they've got an amazing onboarding program when we've got new people coming into the organization.
Hmm.
They hit them with 2 days of really good team building training, teach them all the skills, the non-technical side of their job, like, situational awareness and team building, communication, personalities. I do a mental health talk and share my story with them as well about that side of things. And,
Yeah.
every time we do a round table at the end of that session, it's
Mm,
like all of them, first thing they say is, I actually feel like I'm treated as a person already rather than a number.
yeah.
I mean, it's to me, that's perfect workplace culture right there. Is hitting the ground running with the right messaging, um, all the senior members of the organization coming in and meeting everyone and showing that they care. It's
Mm,
it's a huge thing. It's
yeah.
and so workplace culture for me is the key.
Yeah, I love that. And you've got to start at the start. So doing
Well,
that
that's
kind
it.
of
I
induction.
mean,
Yeah.
especially with organizations may have employees that have bolted on,
Mm,
20 or 30 years and really stuck in their original mindsets. Okay, it can be a challenge to get people
mm,
to change and adapt, but you can bring people through the next generation of people through your organization that you equip them with all the right messaging and
mhm,
and give them all the right tools moving forward, and eventually that's
mm.
what your organization will become as well.
Yeah. And I totally agree as well. It needs to be organization led, but also bottom up approach too, because we're responsible for our own actions and behaviors. And as you've said earlier, responsible for being able to seek help, but we need to be in a safe place to do that. And you've touched a couple of times on resilience. And I know that you say it's something that we're not born with, it's something that we learn. So, how do you help people build that kind of practical resilience in themselves?
Yeah, good. So resilience is a bit of a buzzword these days, and it's sort of so where I'm coming from with that is just having the ability. When I used to do a lot of talks at the Black Dog Institute with high school kids years ago, so I started with all this. One of the definitions we have for resilience is resilience, the ability to face the challenges you face in your life,
Mm,
and then you overcome them, and through that process, you actually come out stronger. So it's not allowing yourself to become a victim of circumstance and challenge and adversity. It's a adversity and challenge is a way to I don't know, undergo personal growth in a massive way. All
mm,
right. So that's resilience for me. And how do we go about that? Well, it's not about just being born tough, because no one
mm,
is. Like we're all, but when we're all absolutely helpless when we're born as a baby, it's just the environment that you're brought through and your life experiences that builds that resilience. But I think for me, it's just resilience is just number one. It's the key to it. Probably the underlying foundation is self-awareness.
yeah.
It's so important that people know the warning signs for them, because everyone's got different tolerances to stress, for instance, as an example. And I guess it's having knowledge of what my warning signs are that I might be pushing very close to the cliff edge of burnout.
Mm,
So can yours might be different than mine, you know what I mean? And it's sort of okay, I'm becoming very irritable. I'm not sleeping well. My eating's out of whack. I'm not eating much. My appetite's gone. Relationships are suffering.
mm,
Everything's, and then it's knowing then, okay, I'm now pushing up to that cliff edge of burnout. I need to stop, make some
mm,
changes, and put my car in reverse and back away from that cliff edge.
yeah.
Because when we take like I did, thinking I can push on, I can go a bit further. I know I'm under the pump. I know I'm struggling, but if I can just get through the next month or the next month
Mm,
after that, that cliff edge of burnout's really blurry. And
yeah.
it's very easy to take one step. It's like you're going close to it with a blindfold on.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you take one step too far and you fall off that cliff, and it's
Yeah.
a long way back up. So
Mm,
I mean, that's resilience for me. Self-awareness is in knowing where your warning signs are, but also then being empowered with the strategies that you can put into place
mm,
to get yourself back where you need to be.
yeah.
Okay, so that is okay. What do I change? Probably the easiest way to describe this would be the last time I went close to the cliff edge of burnout was before my second book was published. So I was still working on that, but trying to fit it in with my bounce back from COVID because my business was shut down for 3 years. So there was a lot. I was trying to play catch up, get the book published, everything. And all my warning signs really started to come through around Christmas time of that year.
Mm,
And then, I had a chat with my wife, my second wife, Kyla, and she's really attuned to me, and that's really important as well.
yeah.
And she gave me a little tap on the shoulder, and I said, "Yeah, I've got some things going on here." So what did I do? I got up at 5:30 in the morning the next day, and I sat down with a pen and paper, and I was going, righto. What do we need to do to get yourself back? Let's come up with a plan. And having a plan is very important. Having
Yeah.
the ability.
Mm,
So, righto, exercise. What are we going to do to increase exercise and to make that a lot more enjoyable? Let's lock it in this time every single day. And these are the things we're going to do.
mm,
Meditation, you need to get back to your meditation. And this is
mm,
where I'd sort of take my foot off the pedal. Right, what are we going to do there? And I wrote it all down in a written plan.
yeah.
I got my gratitude journal back out again, started doing my gratitude journaling, all those sort of things, but I locked it into a plan.
Yeah.
And within 3 or 4 weeks, I had myself back up to where I needed to be. I was all
Mm,
settled down, sleeping again. And the other side of that was too, I made a few changes. Even though in the police, I would say I was a problem drinker, I'm not anymore. But
mm,
even alcohol at that point in time, I thought that's got to go as well. I need to
yeah.
really sharpen up all my diet and my or just get my physical health back on track as well.
Mm,
So it's about having a plan. Sometimes that's a really good way to get yourself sorted out when you're
mhm,
at that pointy edge and when you're struggling.
yeah.
Mm.
And I was chuckling before because that's exactly what I do. We just have to get over this hump, just have to finish this project, just have to finish this one thing. And then you get over that. It's another mountain in front of you.
Oh,
Or
exactly.
it's
Well,
a
and
cliff.
well, that's the other thing too that can happen is, like, say you can run at 10 tenths of your stress capacity, and a lot of us do, and I certainly did in the police force. I was running at 10 tenths of I was maxing out on stress
Mm,
all the time, and I was loving it because of the adrenaline and the that buzz and the excitement, the stimulation. But the problem, if you're running at 10 tenths of your stress, you're already maxed out, and then
yeah.
something you don't expect happens. That can, like, maybe something in your private life. Often,
Mm,
something happens with your marriage, or there's hit some sort of financial crisis, or someone close to you dies, or whatever it might be. That can
yeah.
then be enough to push you over the edge because
Yeah.
you've got no buffer there.
Mm.
So it's like try to try to max out at 8 tenths of your stress capacity. So
Yeah.
you got 2 tenths up your sleeve to navigate the unexpected is important as well.
It's a really good explanation. I love that. Now, before we kind of sign off, I'd love for you to share what one thing leaders can do differently tomorrow to make it safer for people to speak up when they're struggling. Because I know that that is a big challenge. We, as leaders, want to know what to do and want to do the right thing, but we're often scared. So we say nothing or we put our foot in our mouth. What would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I, a lot of leaders might avoid the subject because they're worried about putting their foot in their mouth. But
Mm,
I think taking a leap of faith,
yeah.
just do it anyway. It's one of those. I think the more education that leaders get,
Mm,
better they will be at this. So, I don't promote any particular type of training when it comes to mental health, even though I deliver a lot
yeah.
of stuff, mental health first aid and other things as well. There's plenty of organisations out there that have lots of training packages that you can tap into, and including the Black Dog Institute, who's I've still got a relationship with. But I think at the core, leaders in particular need to have good mental health literacy.
Yeah.
It's one of the key things when I'm doing a roundtable before I run a course. What is it that you would like to take away from this training today? And often I have leaders say, I just don't feel like I've got enough empathy.
Mm,
Well, maybe that's just because you don't have enough understanding. So what we're going to do over the next day or so is going to build your understanding, and empathy will flow from, to some degree, empathy will flow from that as well.
mm,
So get the training so you know what you look for. And then also, a lot of leaders will be approaching these conversations and they may be doing a good job. But if you haven't had training, what happens is you can go away and ruminate and worry about it all night. Did I say everything that I was supposed to say? Are they
yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Is there any threat to their life that I should have taken care of? When you do the training, it sort of gives you the confidence to know that you've done everything you needed to do. And then
Mm,
you don't sort of carry that with you back into your personal life as well. So,
mm.
so for leaders, key education.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for such an incredible conversation. I know people listening will probably be like, how do I kind of connect with you? So, what's the best way to get in touch with you and potentially to buy your book as well?
Yeah, so the books, I don't think you'll find them on too many bookshelves anymore. They've already done their run of the airports and everything, but you can still get them on Amazon and all those online platforms. So they're
Yep.
there. Plus, they're both on audio books.
Awesome.
I narrated the second one myself. They got an actor to do the first one. I asked for Hugh Jackman, but for some reason he was unavailable that day. But so they've got the audio books options as well. But as far as getting in contact with me, my email is craig at
Mhm.
mentalityplus.com.au, or you can look up my website, Mentality Plus, and there's an inquiry form. You can send messages through that too. So
Fantastic. I'll share the links in the show notes, but just want to say again, a huge thank you for sharing your story, for being so open and honest, and for what you do today to help prevent what has happened to you in the past. So thank you so much.
no, thanks, Nicole, and thanks for highlighting this is a really important topic.
It is definitely. And I just wanted to say for listeners out there, if you found this conversation valuable, please subscribe and share it. We'll see you next time on Under the Rug at Work, where we continue to shine light on issues that are too often overlooked.